just to kind of recap from last meeting, I would like to increase our employee raises to 5%. This would cost, I know when we spoke last time, an additional $5.5 million. We are able to do this along with the $10.7 million improvements list because we're projected to end FY26, which is this fiscal year, with a $17.3 million surplus, which is in line with the surpluses the district has seen since FY21, ranging from 18 to 30 million per year. So we can do that without raising taxes based on our numbers. I also want to look at the unmet needs list from last fiscal year. We talked a bit about this. Specifically, I'd like to look at getting those 6 sped paraprofessionals and a K through 12 math specialist, which would total right around $300,000. So all this can be done sustainably given our strong history of surpluses and strong general fund balance. Now to move on to adding a few extra talking points for this meeting, I want to dive into that $20 million transfer request to the building program. So I don't know if it would be helpful to put that slide back up with that $20 million transfer while I speak. It was confirmed at our last meeting that had it not been for the $180 million bond proceeds from the recent Harlem High School bond sale, our building program fund balance beginning fiscal year 27 would have been $9 million. We anticipate receiving $55 million in East Loss revenue throughout FY27. That's that number on top. $47 million plus $8 million. Without the Harlem High School bond proceeds, this would have left us to a total of $64 million in funding for the building program for the fiscal year 27, which we're looking at here. About $18 million of that would have been set aside for bond payments. And according to kind of our numbers that Mr. Casado and I talked about right before this meeting, approximately $50 million is needed for Lakeside and Evans projects for FY27. So again, simple math, that means that had it not been for the Harlem High School bonds proceeds, our building program would have been $4 million short of paying for these 2 contracts alone for FY27, much less any other projects required by the district or even the $2.5 million for computers listed in this budget under instruction for the building fund. So again, simple math, 9 plus 55 in is 64, 50 plus 18 out is 68 million. So the Harlem High School bond is not enough to fund the Harlem High School project, and it's certainly not enough to fund Greenbrier, because almost a third of it, the value of it is going to pay for existing projects. Selling more bonds to supposedly fund Grovetown would just compound the problem, or Greenbrier, either of them would just compound the problem, as it would again be used to dig a hole deeper with yet another project. So the answer is not to keep siphoning off money from the general fund through these transfers that I see, especially when we're saying that we don't have enough money for 6 sped paraprofessionals, for a K through 12 math specialist, for a full 5% employee raise that I think they need. I support our building program 100%, but from what I'm seeing with these numbers, it is unsustainable at the current pace. And before approving this budget and any transfers inside of it, I think we need to have a separate conversation about the pace and sustainability of our building program so that we don't have to keep supplementing it with these transfers that really should be used for general fund operations in conjunction with tax relief come millage rate time.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Ms. Allen is stating here. I've always pressed for a little bit of a pause in the building program, reassessment of what we're doing in the building program. In my mind, the taxpayer really would like to see the building program funded through SPLOST dollars, not necessarily through the general fund. There might be times when we need to do that, but I feel like we're doing that way too often. I think we need to be more fiscally responsible with the building program. So I'd rather give the teachers 5% and not put a building program in front of the teachers. So I'd really be in favor of that as well.
I don't know that it has to be either or, does it? I mean, can't we afford to do 5% and not change the building program?
And I'll let Mr. Casado kind of get into some of the specifics, but the board has to approve this, so y'all can make adjustments. But we built a very fiscally sound budget. We believe this will carry us into next year very strongly with a current 20 to 21% reserve. It is drawing down on that reserve because we had it was growing a little bit faster. Now remember, the reason we're able to do the raises is because we're also taking, Ms. Allen, what you talked about with that savings from the year before. So when we see a mid-year savings, we're able to put that into the raises for the next year. If you were to jump ahead and do that because we anticipated doing it, you would end up spending something that would obviously come out of any raises for next year, but it's not something we know we will get. Now, even though we've historically done that, we may not. And there's a lot of factors that go into that, and there's a whole lot more than we probably want to go into today, but just one of them, is a good example, is the equalization dollars. So it's a large amount that could swing either way, and we've seen it swing. Luckily, we've been able to keep that number at around the 20 million mark. But a lot of school districts see that dip or even maybe in half or even completely go away. So, I would say that Mr. Casado has built a very fiscally sound budget. We're already reducing the reserves. And so our concern would be any more reduction of that would limit us greatly next year, but also wouldn't put us in a place like we've been for the last 5 years to be very financially secure. That's what we ask Mr. Casado, auditors, and everybody else to do for us. We all agree there's a lot of things that we'd like to do for this school district, including raises. But at the same time, we need to be very careful because that's an ongoing expense that will never leave.
And Dr. Flynn, I just want to jump in. I want to clarify that those employee raises are not coming from our fund balance, and they're not decreasing our fund balance, because we run consistent multi-million-dollar surpluses, even with the amount of raises we've given. So for example, FY21 was an $18.7 million excess revenue over expense. 22 was $22.5 million additional revenue over expense. FY23, $25.6 million surplus. FY24, $30 million surplus. FY25, $30.8 million surplus. So I would not say it's accurate to say that we have to dip into our general fund balance to fund these employee raises. These are in the budget with still surpluses. Now, we could go into detail into where these surpluses are coming from and why they're there, and we did do that last year. I won't dive in this year. But I do think it's fair to say that we consistently finish with surpluses, and now what we do with those surpluses, traditionally, either we transfer those to the building program. Some of our transfers, FY22 was $26 million, FY23, $10 million, FY25, I think came in at $23 million according to the audit. Sometimes we add them to the fund balance, in which case the general fund balance, is very high that year and it increases. So I don't think that the answer is to say, well, if we give the full raise, that's coming from our general fund balance and we won't be able to sustain that next year, because all my numbers are showing that we certainly could sustain it. And even when we had this discussion last year, when I was trying to get that $3 million for an additional teacher stipend in these paras, that I keep hearing we need paras, we need sped supports. We're still coming in at over a $17 million surplus even from last year, when we thought we couldn't come up with even $3 million for these employee raises and sped paraprofessionals. So I think just to sum up, I think we need to go back to the drawing board and have a budget that prioritizes our employees versus transfers to the building program, in conjunction with the discussion about the pace of the building program.
So just a couple of things, and this is a good discussion to have. The parapros is a good point. However, we know that we need to work on training and different levels of employees. In the budget, actually in February, we approved 5, and in this budget, we're approving 3 more behavior support enhancements for RBTs. Those are highly trained paraprofessionals. So we're actually adding 8 in the budget since February, but we're doing it in a way where we're getting higher trained professionals that can assist with some of our most important needs. So yeah, we are paying attention to this, and we've spent a lot of time and effort on it, and I trust Mr. Casado and his department and how we're laying this out so we can be fiscally conservative. As you'll remember, and I'll let Mr. Casado talk about about some of the building program, but that 20 million is going into the 10-year plan. I don't have a problem having a discussion on whether you think we should do it or shouldn't do it, although we told the community that this was the plan, and we gave you a list of almost $20 million that we're gonna send that money for improvements for our school districts into. That's where that money's going. It's not going to supplement anything else. And I think, Mr. Casado, you're gonna maybe have to, we don't probably have time to get into all the wrong numbers there, but that's not a correct analysis of how you stated that, Ms. Allen.
I disagree, I stand by my numbers, just
Sorry?
in the record.
I would support our CFO's proposed budget with a raise of 3%, because, he knows what he's doing, and, I would say that, there's no way that we can do all the things we need to do to maintain our physical plan without spending general fund dollars. East Block would never cover all of that, given the number of buildings we have, the ages of the buildings, things of that nature. Now, with regard to 3% versus a 5% raise, I believe that, you had indicated that that's a $5.5 million increase, over what's proposed. Is that correct, Mr. Casado?
Yeah, it's close, yes.
And a raise is not a one-time thing. It's not like, one of these bonus checks or something like that. It multiplies over time. That's 5.5 million every year that will be as part of our budget if we start, if we go that route. Keep in mind, almost 90% of our budget is personnel. Also keep in mind that the state, the legislature, has not appropriated funds for any raises for any school district. They've sent a one-time check, but all of that money would be local dollars, local millage rate dollars over and above. And I'm not comfortable going out on a limb like that. The, $5.5 million is 2/3 of a million, correct?
It's close, yes, sir.
So I believe 3% cost of living adjustment is appropriate, and I think it, next year we can continue to give raises on an annual basis as long as we don't overextend ourselves.
So I want to speak real quick, if you don't mind. I want to speak to the point of this is the building program
Excuse me a
that the.
second. Let's give Ms. Teasley an opportunity, then we'll come back.
I'm looking at the list of things that need to be done next year. All right, who's going to be doing these? Are we putting these out for bid, or are we doing these in-house?
It'll be a bid depends.
Okay, so like HVAC, who's doing that?
Yeah, that would be a bid out.
Okay, is that gonna be one company, is that gonna be multiple companies?
We breed for bid low bid.
Okay, but that has to be done during the summer, right?
Not necessarily, they can switch them out, depends on what units we're talking about, what school, some of that work can be done during the school year.
There seems to be a good bit of work that will need to be done during the summer, and I'm not seeing how we could do it during the summer, so I'm just wondering, is it possible that we could do part of this one school year and part of it another school year? So my question for Mr. Casada is, if we use the same bottom line, so we don't get overextended, if we look at the 5% and look at what we can reasonably do this year within the 20 million, and yet not transfer an entire 20 million, what kind of numbers can we work with there? What would it take to do a 5% raise? And what would we be able to reasonably transfer to the building fund?
Yeah, I'd have to get with, facilities and construction and talk about the likelihood of how much we could do, those types of things.
Would we be overextended for a following year if we did that? Would we be able to maintain that level of spending for the coming budget?
Yeah, I think the fund balance, how much we're dipping into the fund balance already is as much as I would recommend that we would do. And so, of course, your fund balance rolls over and becomes your starting fund balance for the next fiscal year.
And I'm not asking what I'm asking is, can we keep the bottom line the same, do 5%, and then adjust the 20 million? I mean, can we play with those numbers and see what's possible?
Yes, I mean, you could, I mean, that's a possibility, of course.
Ms. Sutton, last meeting I had asked if you had run the 5%.
Yes,
Can you share what kind of numbers that you crunched in that regard?
so 5%, let me back up, so the 3%, as you saw, is 8.2 million. If you were to raise that 5%, it's 13.7 million, so the 5.5 or so million that we've been talking about additional is correct.
So what could we do then with it, transfer to the building fund with that?
We went down to 10 million, because I agree with Mrs. Teasley. If we looked at going down to 10 million, I agree, there's an awful lot of stuff on this list. I always question, I know we have a lot of buildings, I know we have a lot of schools, a lot of maintenance. I always question though, are we staggering our projects accordingly? Do we really need to be spending $20 million in 1 year on projects, and can we actually complete all these projects? Or is some of this gonna carry over into the next year with a surplus of dollars that we're trying to ask for here? I'd rather err on the side of cutting that number in half and planning that way, if we can do that.
Make that possible?
That's gonna ultimately be a board decision. Y'all can do that, and remember, we're working this off of, and we have our, and again, we can go back and talk about this, but when we went to the voters and talked about the last SPLOST and talked about the bonds, we were very clear on what they were gonna get. We posted the list that has remained on our website. This will keep us from being able to complete that in the 10-year period. If we keep siphoning off each year more projects, I just think that's what we need to know, and that's a decision that the board can make.
Well, hopefully, I mean, I'd like to think that if we keep trying to do cost of living increases every year, and yet we're still 10.4% behind inflation in terms of employee wages. And I think that's part of our issue with, I mean, I think everybody feels it, and I think it's part of the issue with custodians, with bus drivers, and why that's difficult.
Yeah, I don't think any of us would disagree with you. I mean, if we could do 10, it'd be great too. But we've stayed above not only the local region, but we have, I mean, y'all know this, we've stayed above the state. We're in the top 5% of the state on raises and additions. And this year, just recall, we were able to do that $2,000 for every employee. And that did cost that $2.5 million, but that's an additional increase in the paychecks this year that we may not have the next year or the next year.
And we're gonna have data center money, we're gonna go in the dough.
I just want to make sure we have all of this out on the table.
That's a good point.
You know,
Find more time on the building program, we can see what will happen with this potential for future dollars. It's just another reason why we should consider that. And I'd like to make a comment, Dr. Flint, in that you say that this is what the taxpayer asked for. I really believe that the taxpayer would want to put the teacher in front of the building program to some extent, particularly considering that we have had inflationary issues, we've had major catastrophic events that occur in this country, have changed the dynamics of the financials in regard to the building program. Things have changed drastically since they talked about what they wanted in a building. I don't think they want dollars spread across SPLOST and across property taxes. Most of the buildings should be in the SPLOST. I think most people want it in SPLOST. That's what it was designed for, and we need to move in that direction, and that's what I encourage the board to do.
Well, and to piggyback off of Mr. Kent with this line that this is what the taxpayers wanted, so we need to keep moving forward at this pace, I would point to our 2025 audit, and where it states that the 2022 East Loss program, the original estimated cost for those projects was $160 million. According to our audit, the current estimated cost for these projects is $313.5 million. So something certainly has changed with the way these projects are coming into reality with what we expected they would cost or what they currently cost. And so we don't just roll full steam ahead. We take a moment to say, okay, given the situation, how do we move forward? If we need the $20 million, it's my understanding that we have $20 million built into that $126 million construction cost that is already earmarked for Greenbrier, correct? To begin the roughly?
Believe it's
So
something.
if we absolutely need $20 million, we pause the program for a year, get an idea of what the situation looks like. There's that $20 million now without the transfer that could be used to pause Greenbrier and use it for this list of maintenance needs that we're being given. So there is a way to fund it without a transfer if we are willing to take a step back and say, okay, we may have envisioned a 10-year program, but times have changed, and the responsible thing to do is to take a step back and say, is this sustainable given all the circumstances in the last 4 to 5 years? And additionally, I do want to point out this maintenance and operations under the general fund is listed at $38 million. I'm seeing that consistently rise approximately 8% each year. In 2024, it was, let me see, in 2024, it was 26.6 million, in FY25, it was 29 million. Even a few years ago, going backwards, in 2022, it was 21.8 million. So I'm seeing, even as we're transferring to our building program, our maintenance and operations, which validly fits inside of our general fund, is growing at approximately 8% a year. So what is making that fund grow, or that category grow exponentially, even as we're still having this list of projects brought to us for HVAC systems and other things? What are some examples of projects that are in that category above and beyond this list that's being given to us that says, hey, this is what we need to have done?
Can we just talk about the raises? We take one issue at a time. I'm not saying that's not what we're talking about.
No, that's
But
fine.
tonight, can we
Go
just
ahead,
talk
Mr.
about the issue at hand, which in my mind is raises, and what we're gonna do with this particular budget, and we're not talking about the building budget, are we? There's two separate budgets, are they
Well,
not?
I'm just jumping in to try to figure out how to finance the raises sustainably. That's kind of where I'm
And that's what I'm asking. If we do the 5%, is that possible? If we keep the bottom number on this budget right here, as you have it, as we ended it on June 30th, 2027, if we end it with this number, and we do 5%, and we adjust the transfer to the building fund, what is that magic number for the building fund that will allow us to do that and have a sustainable amount going forward? Is that possible?
The ongoing expenses, it's not gonna be a dollar for dollar on that, so it will be hard. I will mention that we built the budget on a 3% increase. That's what it's built on. It's pretty conservative.
It is, but inflation is 3%, so they're really not gonna feel it.
I'm just kind of making the point that we're being very conservative because the tax digest will probably come in maybe double that, somewhere in that neighborhood. But our goal, and I know the board's goal, has been to try to give that money back to the taxpayers.
True.
And so, we're gonna be back here having this discussion on a millage rate.
We're good at discussion stuff.
Yeah, well, we're gonna be back having a discussion on a millage rate, and it will be a reduction, probably, given that we would anticipate that coming in higher than. So we're gonna be trying to do some tax relief because we're seeing growth in the digest, but we're gonna be giving money back to the homeowners in some cases. Obviously, every case is a little bit different.
And hopefully homeowners are gonna feel the relief that they're gonna be getting a $10,000 home state exemption as opposed to $2,000, right?
That's right.
Just to clarify, this list that we were given to justify the $20 million, it has things like painting schools, replacing ceiling tile and paint grid, replacing a stage curtain. Am I really understanding correctly that if we don't transfer $20 million out of the general fund, that we have no room in our East Lost building fund budget or capital funds? We cannot do these projects if we don't transfer
East
that.
Lost is specified in the language of the East Lost, is it not?
Well, and remember now, the build-in program, up until Greenbrier, is funded. It's funded, the money's in the bank. We're talking about the general fund transfer going to the portions of the 10-year plan that are old portions that need to be improved. You can not do that if you want, it's just gonna push that out a little bit further. That is something that typically happens. When you see a recession, most school districts are gonna delay HVAC, roofs, parking lots, all of that is gonna come off, because when you see that recession happen, that's where that first place is, and that probably will happen in the future also. But we haven't had any increase in taxes to pay for what you're mentioning up there. We've been able to do this work with not only the SPLOST and the bonds and the payback of the bonds without a tax increase. As a matter of fact, we've reduced the millage from 18.3 to 16.2 in the last 4 years.
1989 levels.
This is really good news, and so I don't want anybody to walk away. There's great discussion to have here, and we can move money from here to here. But as a board, y'all should be congratulated for what you've done for the last 5 years and the progress we've made. And the money's in the bank to get through with Greenbrier. If you actually stop it today, it will cost the taxpayer money.
So I think there's a difference between money being allocated based on future revenue and money being in the bank. So I would just respectfully disagree with that statement. But back to my original question, what happened to the eSPOS dollars that were supposed to be for this list to get done? Because they're not in the capital funds, that's why we're transferring them from the general fund. So I would say, what happened to the eSPOS dollars to do the general maintenance list? And then secondary, if they're not there, then why is this not part, what's included in our maintenance and operations budget of 38 million that is not things like painting schools and installing HVAC systems and LED lights, and repaving parking lots? So what's in that 38 million?
That's our regular maintenance, the regular maintenance to continue to keep the schools clean at the level they are, replacement of equipment, hiring of people, all of that is our maintenance, our regular maintenance budget. What we're trying to do, and what we took to everybody and just presented it to the community, was this is what the needs of the schools are, and we got that from each of the schools, and we're gonna try to tick away at that and repair these older areas of schools that can't be done with a regular maintenance budget. These are capital improvements, and that's what we're doing. Now, the SPOS budget, there's a budget for that. The monies have been budgeted. So when we talk about SPOS, you can't just say, let's just take it out of SPOS. All those dollars have been budgeted through the entire SPOS program. It's not just a pot we just go run to and pull more money out of.
So then where are they for these projects then, since we have to transfer it from the general fund?
These projects are projects that we agreed to use money from the general fund in regular transfers, and we've discussed this for the 4 or 5 years with the board about how these would get paid. And these, outside of the 5 high schools, these were gonna be completed using general fund transfers to the building program.
Are these in order of needs, or has anybody looked at, like?
Well, we do know,
Most needed?
but it's just a list, that's not it.
Is there anyone in the building that could speak to these, that's in the maintenance and the building, department, that could talk about if this is realistically able to even be done in a year?
Well, Mr. Sanders,
Yes, sir.
can you get all this done?
It'd be difficult, but it could be managed.
You're not doing it all, we can get it outsourced.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And with the funds, with the amount that y'all put on the list.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Is this considered a normal amount of work in a given year?
For the size of the district, Mr. Kent, it would be, considering the age of the facilities that we have. And it's stuff that, as Dr. Flint said, this stuff has been kind of pushed down the road a little bit, and needs to be taken care of.
It's called deferred maintenance, right?
Some would, yes, sir.
Well, this has been a great discussion. I hope questions have been answered, and I think the best thing to do at this point is, as we look forward to passing the final budget, would be to present some alternative numbers based on the discussion today, and then put it up for a vote as to
Chairman Deacon, we are taking a tentative vote today, correct? That was in the slides?
Well, I would move to table that based on discussion.
I would second that as well.
I would like to take it tonight, since we've already informed the public that we would and remain on schedule.
Well, tentative vote is not required and it means nothing until we final vote.
No, I understand that, but if we're,
Just a poll of where people stand.
I think it would be beneficial, so if we're having discussion on that motion, I would, not vote in support of that motion.
So what motion is that now?
Well, there's a motion to table on the floor. Under Robert's Rules of Order, a motion to table is not debatable. So, let's just vote on that, and then we can do what we need to do next. All in favor of tabling the tentative vote, raise your right hand. All opposed? All right, 2-2, motion fails. So,
I make a motion to do a tentative vote as per our schedule shared with the public,
So what is your motion now?
yeah, what's the motion?
to do a tentative vote on the
On
budget,
On what?
on approving this budget,
At 3%?
as it's been presented to us.
Okay. Got a second?
Second.
All in favor of approval of, tentative approval of the budget as presented by, the superintendent, raise your right hand. All opposed? Okay. Motion fails, it did not tentatively approve. Okay, what's next on our